I'm sitting here by the window, watching the afternoon light stretch across the floor. It moves slower than it used to. Or maybe I'm the one who's slowed down enough to notice. The dust particles float in the sunbeam, and I find myself following them with my eyes, thinking about how long it took me to learn that stillness isn't the same as stagnation. There's a certain quiet that comes with being over 50, not the quiet of silence, but the quiet of knowing, of having said too many yeses when I meant no, of having swallowed words that needed to be spoken, of having called it strength when it was really just fear dressed up in polite clothing. I keep a journal now. Nothing fancy, just a simple notebook with a blue cover. Sometimes I flip back through the years and read what I wrote at 40, at 45. The patterns are there, clear as day. The same situations repeating, the same people taking, the same version of me, giving and giving until there was nothing left but the hollow echo of who I used to be. For so many years, I thought patience meant endurance. That being a good person meant absorbing whatever came my way. The dismissive comment at the family dinner, the friend who only called when they needed something, the colleague who took credit for my work, the family member who showed up late or not at all, the partner who forgot to ask how my day was. The boundary crossed again and again because I didn't want to seem difficult. I told myself I was being mature, understanding, the bigger person. I'd lie awake at night, rehearsing conversations I'd never have, imagining what I'd say if I were braver. If I were the kind of person who could speak up without their voice shaking, who could set a boundary without immediately apologizing for it. But here's what I've learned. Sitting in this body that's carried me through decades of accommodation and silence, there's a difference between grace and self-abandonment, between kindness and self-erasure, between love and the slow, quiet, disappearing act I'd been performing for most of my life. With the time I have left, I understand now that saying nothing when you're hurt isn't patience. It's a slow erasure of yourself. It's choosing peace for everyone else and chaos for your own heart. That doing everything for everyone while your own needs gather dust isn't generosity. It's a quiet form of disappearing. It's teaching people that you don't matter, then wondering why they believe you. That accepting disrespect because you don't want conflict isn't strength. It's fear wearing a crown. It's trading your dignity for the temporary comfort of avoiding an uncomfortable conversation. That overworking yourself while others coast isn't dedication. It's self-betrayal. It's hoping someone will notice your exhaustion and tell you to stop instead of stopping yourself. That tolerating emotional distance in relationships isn't understanding. It's loneliness dressed up as maturity. It's accepting crumbs and calling it a feast. I look at photographs sometimes. Me at 30, at 40. I see someone who smiled through so much, who stayed late at work because saying no felt selfish, who showed up for everyone's crisis but suffered through her own alone, who tolerated emotional distance because asking for more felt needy, who kept the peace by keeping quiet, kept the relationship by keeping small, who wore exhaustion like a badge of honor and wondered why no one seemed to care. There I am at my daughter's birthday party, smiling while dying inside because my own mother had just criticized everything I'd done. There I am at the office celebration, celebrating everyone else's promotion while my own contributions went unmentioned. There I am at the family reunion, playing the role I'd been assigned since childhood, the strong one, the reliable one, the one who never complains. And I want to reach through the years and whisper, you're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to want kindness. You're allowed to expect respect. You're allowed to say when something hurts. You're allowed to leave rooms that make you smaller. You're allowed to want more than you're getting. What I've stopped doing, and what changed everything, I stopped answering the phone when I need rest, just because it rang. The world didn't end. People learned to leave messages, and I learned that my rest isn't less important than their convenience. I stopped explaining myself to people who've already decided what they think. I used to spend hours crafting explanations, hoping they'd understand. Now I know, people who want to understand you will. People who don't, won't, no matter how eloquently you explain. I stopped making myself smaller so others could feel bigger. I stopped dimming my accomplishments, stopped apologizing for my success, stopped hiding my intelligence to make others comfortable with their ignorance. I stopped calling it keeping the peace when what I was really doing was swallowing my own voice. Because there's no peace in silence when your heart is screaming. I stopped showing up for people who never showed up for me, then feeling guilty about it. I stopped being the one who always reached out, always checked in, always remembered, always cared. I stopped accepting "that's just how they are" as an excuse for bad behavior, because if that's just how they are, then this is just how I am, someone who doesn't tolerate it anymore. I stopped overworking to prove my worth, stopped staying late to show dedication, stopped doing the work of 3 people for the salary of 1, stopped believing that my value was measured by my output. I stopped tolerating disrespect from family just because we share blood. Being related doesn't give anyone the right to treat you poorly. Family should be held to a higher standard, not a lower one. There's this moment that comes, maybe it came for you already, maybe it's coming soon, when you realize that life isn't infinite, that the time you spend tolerating things that diminish you is time you'll never get back, that being polite to people who are unkind to you isn't a virtue, it's just expensive. Expensive in ways that don't show up on any bank statement, but drain you all the same. I had my moment on a Tuesday, nothing dramatic. I was making dinner and the phone rang. It was someone who only ever called when they needed something. And I looked at that phone and I thought, I don't want to answer this. I don't want to spend the next hour listening to their problems while they never once ask about mine. I don't want to give advice they won't take, offer support they won't appreciate, or pour from a cup that's already empty. So I didn't answer. And the world kept turning. That was the beginning. The first small no. The first time I chose myself without apologizing for it. So I started practicing something radical. I started treating myself like someone I loved. When someone spoke to me in a way I'd never speak to a friend, I said something. Quietly, calmly, but I said it. I don't appreciate being spoken to that way. 6 words that felt like jumping off a cliff. When someone expected me to carry what they refused to lift themselves, I stopped picking it up. I can't help with that right now. 7 words that felt like betrayal, but were actually just honesty. When someone's presence left me feeling empty, I stopped pretending I was full. I stopped forcing myself to engage, stopped showing up out of obligation, stopped watering dead plants hoping they'd bloom. When someone violated a boundary I'd set, I enforced it. Not with anger, not with drama, just with consistency. I told you I'm not available on Sundays. I meant it. When someone asked me to justify my no, I didn't. No is a complete sentence. It doesn't need a supporting essay. And here's what I didn't expect. The right people stayed. The ones who'd been waiting for me to show up fully, honestly. The ones who didn't need me to be small to feel comfortable. The ones who celebrated my boundaries instead of punishing me for them. The ones who said, I'm glad you're finally putting yourself first. The wrong people left. And the space they left behind? It filled with air I could finally breathe. It filled with peace. It filled with self-respect. It filled with the version of me I'd been hiding for decades. Some people got angry, called me selfish, said I'd changed. And you know what? They were right. I had changed. I'd finally started caring about myself as much as I cared about everyone else. Some relationships ended, and I grieved them. Not because I wanted them back, but because I mourned the time I'd spent trying to make them work, trying to be enough for people who would never see me as enough, no matter what I did. But some relationships deepened, became richer, more honest, because when you stop pretending, you give others permission to stop pretending too. Real intimacy isn't built on performance. It's built on truth. I'm not telling you to become harsh. Life's already hard enough without us adding more edges to it. I'm telling you that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. They let the right things in and keep the harmful things out. They're not about shutting people out. They're about protecting what matters most. Your peace, your health, your heart, your time, your energy, your very self. I'm telling you that you can be kind without being a doormat, compassionate without being a dumping ground, loving without losing yourself, generous without being depleted, strong without being silent. If you're over 50 and still doing this, still accepting less than you deserve, still calling self-neglect strength, still apologizing for taking up space, I want you to know, it's not too late to stop. I know it feels late. I know you've been doing this for so long that it feels like who you are, but it's not who you are. It's just what you've been doing. And what you've been doing, you can stop doing. It's not selfish to start. Starting to care for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. You can't pour from an empty cup, and yours has been empty for so long, you've forgotten what it feels like to be full. It's not mean to speak up. Your voice isn't a weapon. Your truth isn't violence. Your boundaries aren't punishments. Speaking up is just honesty. And honesty, even when uncomfortable, is a form of respect for yourself and for others. You don't need to explain yourself to people who've already made you the villain for having boundaries. Let them think what they want. Let them tell their version of the story where you're difficult, demanding, changed. You know the truth. The people who matter know the truth. That's enough. You don't need to keep proving you're good by letting people be bad to you. Your goodness isn't measured by your tolerance for mistreatment. Your worth isn't proven by your capacity to absorb abuse. You don't earn love by accepting less than love. You don't need permission to want better relationships, better treatment, better balance, better respect. You don't need anyone's approval to pursue a life that doesn't exhaust you. I sit here now, in this quieter chapter, and I think about all the years I spent trying to earn love by erasing my needs, and I feel tender toward that version of me. She was doing her best with what she knew. She was operating from old programming. Be nice, don't make waves, put others first, your needs are selfish, good people don't complain. But I also feel something else. Relief. Deep, bone-settling relief. Because I finally understand that love, real love, doesn't ask you to disappear. It doesn't require your silence. It doesn't demand your exhaustion as proof of your worth. Real love celebrates you as you are, wants you to thrive, makes space for your needs, values your voice. The sun's moved across the floor now, painting everything gold. My tea has gone cold in its cup. There's a bird outside singing the same 3 notes over and over, and I'm thinking about how simple things are when you finally let them be simple. There's less time ahead than there is behind, and that's okay, because I'm finally learning to spend it honestly, to say no without a paragraph of justification, without 17 apologetic preambles, without offering alternatives or solutions or fixes. Just, no, that doesn't work for me. To say yes only when I mean it, not out of guilt, not out of fear, not out of habit, only when it's a genuine yes that comes from desire, not obligation. To let people be disappointed in me if the alternative is being disappointed in myself. Because I've spent enough years betraying myself to keep others comfortable. That era is over. To walk away from conversations that drain me, rooms that diminish me, relationships that deplete me, and do it without guilt. To stop keeping score, but also to stop giving to people who only take. To rest without earning it. To have needs without apologizing for them. To take up space without making myself small to compensate. So if you're reading this and something's stirring in your chest, that familiar ache of recognition, maybe this is your moment. The moment you stop waiting for permission to matter. The moment you realize that setting a boundary isn't cruel, staying silent is. Cruel to yourself, cruel to the version of you that's been begging to breathe. The moment you understand that you don't owe anyone your smallness. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone the performance of being fine when you're falling apart. The moment you see clearly that the people who get upset when you set boundaries are the people who benefited from you having none. The moment you finally understand you are not responsible for other people's emotional regulation, their disappointment, their anger, their discomfort. They're adults. Let them feel their feelings. I can't give you a formula. Life's not like that. But I can tell you this. The first time you speak up, your voice might shake. Mine did. It came out quiet and trembling, and I thought maybe they didn't hear me, but they did. The first time you say no, you might feel guilty. I did. I felt it in my stomach, heavy and cold. I almost called back to say yes, to take it back, but I didn't. The first time you walk away from what's always diminished you, you might feel afraid. I was terrified, thought I was making a mistake, thought I'd regret it, but I didn't. But you'll also feel something else. Something you might have forgotten was possible. You'll feel like yourself again. Not the performing version, not the accommodating version, not the exhausted, depleted, disappearing version. The real you, the one who's been waiting patiently beneath all those layers of yes and sorry, and it's fine, and I don't mind. And there's no strength more real than that. The strength to be honest, the strength to have needs, the strength to say, this doesn't work for me anymore. The strength to choose yourself again and again, even when it's uncomfortable, even when people are disappointed, even when the old guilt tries to pull you back. I'm sitting here as the light fades, and I'm thinking about you, whoever you are, reading this. Maybe you're 52 and just starting to question things. Maybe you're 67 and wondering if it's too late. Maybe you're 45 and recognizing the path you're on. It's not too late. It's never too late to come home to yourself. What have you stopped accepting in this chapter of your life? I'd love to hear what you've learned. Not because I have all the answers, I don't, but because sometimes knowing we're not alone in this makes all the difference. And if you're still learning, still practicing, still finding your voice after all these years of silence, me too. We're in good company. The best company, actually. The company of people who finally decided they matter. Leave a comment if you'd like. Share your story, or just sit with this for a while. Whatever feels right. I'll be here, by this window, cheering for you either way.